The sun beat down on my back, warm and comforting. The chlorine smell of the pool mingled with the faint scent of barbecue from the grill, where my ribs were slowly smoking. It was a perfect Saturday afternoon. My wife, Sarah, was lounging on a sun chair, a book in her hand, and a contented smile on her face. Our kids, little Maya and young Marcus Jr., were splashing each other playfully in the shallow end of the pool, their laughter bubbling up like the water features we had installed last summer. After a long week of work, this was exactly what I needed: family, sunshine, and the calming coolness of my own backyard oasis. We had worked hard for this. Years of saving, sacrificing, and planning had finally culminated in this house, this yard, this pool. It was more than just property. It was a symbol of everything we had achieved, a space where we could relax, recharge, and create memories as a family. I closed my eyes for a moment, savoring the peace. That peace, however, was always a fragile thing, especially living next door to Karen. Karen. Just the name alone could raise my blood pressure. She was the epitome of the overly entitled, perpetually complaining suburban stereotype. Always finding something to nitpick, something to criticize, something to demand. Her perfectly manicured lawn always looked just a little too perfect. Her pristine white SUV always parked just a little too carefully. And then there was her daughter, Lucy, a miniature version of Karen, but amplified with the boundless energy and unchecked entitlement of a teenager. Lucy was a regular menace, constantly testing boundaries, and always seeming to have a chip on her shoulder when it came to me. I had tried to be neighborly, of course. I'm the kind of guy who believes in being a good member of the community. I offered to help Karen with her yard work, waved hello when I saw her, even brought over a plate of my famous ribs once. But nothing seemed to work. She always met my efforts with suspicion, a barely concealed disdain that made my skin crawl. She never explicitly said anything prejudiced, but the subtle microaggressions, the way she would clutch her purse tighter when I walked by, the pointed glances, spoke volumes. Lucy was just as bad, if not worse. She would blast her music at all hours, leave her trash on my side of the fence, and once even keyed my car. I had caught her in the act, and when I confronted her, she simply smirked and said, "Prove it." I reported it to the police, but without concrete evidence, there was nothing they could do. I decided to let it go, not wanting to escalate things further. But I knew, deep down, that this was a battle I couldn't avoid forever. It was only a matter of time before Lucy's unchecked behavior led to a major confrontation. And as I floated in my pool, enjoying what I thought was a perfect afternoon, I had a sinking feeling that that time was fast approaching. I could almost taste the trouble brewing in the air, as if the very molecules around me were vibrating with a sense of impending doom. It wasn't long until my fears materialized, shattering the idyllic scene. The gate to the backyard, which I usually kept locked, burst open with a loud clang. I sat up in the pool, startled, and turned to see Lucy standing there, surrounded by a gaggle of her teenage friends. They were all decked out in swimsuits, their faces flushed with excitement. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a friendly visit. This was an invasion. And judging by the determined look on Lucy's face, it was going to be a lot more than just annoying. Lucy didn't even bother with a greeting. Her voice, shrill and demanding, cut through the peaceful afternoon like a knife. "Okay, Mr. Johnson," she started, her tone dripping with condescension. "You need to get out of the pool. Now!" I stared at her, dumbfounded. Had I heard her correctly? I must have misheard her. There was no way she would be this outrageous. "Excuse me?" I finally managed to stammer out, glancing at Sarah, who was now watching the scene unfold with a look of growing concern. The kids had stopped splashing and were clinging to the side of the pool, their eyes wide with apprehension. Lucy rolled her eyes, as if I was being deliberately obtuse. I said, "Get out of the pool. We're having a party, and we need it." She gestured dramatically to her friends, who were all nodding in agreement, their faces expectant. My shock quickly turned to anger. This wasn't just rude, it was insane. "Lucy," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "this is my property. This is my pool. You can't just come in here and demand that I leave." "But we want to have a party," she whined, her voice taking on a petulant edge. "And your pool is the perfect size. Besides," she added with a sneer, "you can always swim some other time. This is my pool and my property that I share with my family. This is our home. You and your friends are not welcome here. You're basically trespassing, and I can call the authorities if I wanted to." I said sternly I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The audacity of this girl was astounding. She seriously believed that she had the right to kick me and my family out of our own pool, just because she wanted to have a party. The entitlement was staggering. "Lucy, I don't know what makes you think you can just waltz in here and demand something like this, but this is my house, my pool, and I'm not going anywhere. You and your friends need to leave. Now." Her face twisted with fury. "Fine," she spat. "If you're not going to do it the easy way, we'll just have to make you." She turned to her friends, her eyes blazing with a manic energy that sent a shiver down my spine. "Come on, guys," she yelled. "Let's get him out of there!" My heart pounded in my chest. I knew this was going to escalate quickly. Sarah was already on her feet, grabbing her phone and moving towards the house. "I'm calling the police," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Lucy just laughed. "Go ahead," she shouted. "They won't do anything. We're just having a little fun." It was clear that Lucy and her friends were about to swarm me in the pool. I knew I had to stand my ground, not just for myself, but for my family. I couldn't let them be intimidated or bullied. I stood up in the pool, getting ready for what was about to happen. I planted my feet firmly on the bottom, squaring my shoulders, and preparing for the inevitable. I was ready to defend my property and my family, no matter what the cost. I knew things were about to get ugly, and the image of what she and her friends could do to me in the pool as water splashed around and filled the whole area. Before I could even brace myself, Lucy and a few of her bolder friends jumped into the pool. The water splashed around me, cold and jarring. They surged towards me, grabbing at my arms and legs, trying to pull me down. "Get out! Get out now!" Lucy screamed, her voice high-pitched and hysterical. Her friends echoed her cries, their faces contorted with a mixture of excitement and aggression. I struggled against them, trying to fend them off without hurting them. I didn't want to resort to violence, but I wasn't going to let them push me around. I pushed them away, dislodging their grip on my limbs. "Get off me! This is my property! You have no right to do this!" But more of her friends were jumping into the pool, adding to the chaos. The water was churning, and I was surrounded. They were relentless, pulling and pushing, their numbers overwhelming me. I felt myself losing my balance, struggling to stay on my feet. I managed to keep from falling completely, but they were slowly but surely herding me toward the shallow end. I could see the fear in my children's eyes as they watched the scene unfold. Maya was crying, clinging to Sarah's leg, while Marcus Jr. stood frozen, his face pale with terror. I had to stop this. I couldn't let them witness this. Summoning all my strength, I pushed back against the onslaught, shoving several of the girls away from me. I managed to create a small pocket of space around me, giving me a moment to breathe. "Get out of my pool!" I roared, my voice echoing across the yard. "Leave my family alone!" My outburst seemed to momentarily stun them. They paused, their eyes wide with surprise. Taking advantage of the momentary respite, I pushed my way through the crowd, heading towards the edge of the pool. I needed to get out of the water to gain some kind of advantage. As I reached the side of the pool, Lucy lunged at me, grabbing my arm. "You're not going anywhere!" she shrieked, her grip surprisingly strong. I tried to shake her off, but she held on tight. Suddenly, Sarah appeared, standing at the edge of the pool, her face a mask of fury. "Get away from my husband!" she screamed, and forcefully yanked Lucy's hand off my arm. Sarah, normally a calm and collected person, was now radiating a fierce protectiveness that I had never seen before. She meant business. Lucy, taken by surprise, stumbled backward, almost falling into the pool. She glared at Sarah, her eyes filled with venom. "You haven't seen the last of me," she snarled. "I'll be back!" With that, she scrambled out of the pool along with the rest of her friends, and they all marched towards the gate, their faces a mixture of anger and frustration. I stood there, panting, my body aching, my mind reeling from what had just happened. I looked at Sarah, her eyes still blazing with anger, and then at my children, who were now huddled together, trembling. I knew that this was far from over. Lucy's threat hung in the air, heavy and ominous. I had a feeling that this was just the beginning of a much bigger battle. I had no idea what Lucy was planning, but I knew it couldn't be good. We had to be prepared. The fight for my home and family had only just begun. After Lucy and her friends stormed off, leaving a trail of wet footprints and lingering hostility, a heavy silence descended upon our backyard. The idyllic atmosphere was shattered, replaced by a palpable sense of anxiety. The afternoon sun, which had been so welcoming just moments before, now seemed to cast harsh shadows, accentuating the tension in the air. Sarah rushed to the children, wrapping them in towels and pulling them close. It's okay, she murmured, her voice soothing but strained. "Everything's going to be all right." I climbed out of the pool, my body feeling stiff and sore. The water dripped off me, forming puddles on the patio. I grabbed a towel and dried myself off, trying to shake off the feeling of violation that had settled over me. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, her eyes filled with concern. "Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just a little shaken." Up. I didn't want to worry her more than she already was. "Did you call the police?" "Yes," she said. "They're on their way." I told them everything that happened. We waited in silence, the only sound the gentle hum of the pool filter and the distant sound of traffic. The kids stayed huddled together, their eyes darting nervously towards the gate, as if expecting Lucy and her gang to reappear at any moment. I felt a surge of protectiveness wash over me. I wouldn't let anything happen to my family. I would defend them with my life, if I had to. About 20 minutes later, we saw the flashing lights of a police car approaching. 2 officers got out of the car and walked towards us, their expressions serious. I recounted the entire incident, from Lucy's initial demand to the physical confrontation in the pool. I explained how she and her friends had trespassed on my property and attempted to force me out of my own pool. I emphasized the threat she had made before leaving. The officers listened attentively, taking notes. They assured me that they would investigate the matter thoroughly and take appropriate action. They also warned me to be cautious and to call them immediately if Lucy or her friends returned. As the officers were leaving, they noticed a group of teenagers congregating near the entrance to our subdivision. They stopped to question them, and I recognized Lucy among them. She was talking animatedly, gesturing towards our house. The officers spoke to them for a few minutes, then let them go with a warning. As I watched them walk away, I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. Lucy was clearly up to something. She wasn't going to let this go. I had a feeling that she was gathering reinforcements, preparing for a second assault. I turned to Sarah. "We need to be ready," I said, my voice grim. "She's coming back, and she's not going to be alone." Sarah nodded, her face resolute. "What do you want me to do?" "Make sure the doors and windows are locked," I said, "and call a few of my friends from the neighborhood. Tell them what's happening and ask them to come over. We need to have some extra eyes and ears." I picked up my phone, calling my cousins and my close friends down the street. Sarah called her family to let them know what was going on. We started preparing for what was to come. I grabbed a baseball bat from the garage, just in case. I knew that violence should always be a last resort, but I wasn't going to be caught unprepared. I would do whatever it took to protect my family and my property. I peeked through the window to see Lucy talking to a group of people. They were walking towards my house. "They're coming," I said. It wasn't even 30 minutes after the police left that I saw them. A horde of teenagers, easily 20 or more, marching down the street towards my house. Lucy was at the front, her face flushed with triumph, her eyes gleaming with a manic energy that sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just a spontaneous gathering. This was a calculated assault. It was terrifying. My heart pounded in my chest. This was worse than I had imagined. I grabbed the baseball bat, my hands trembling slightly. Sarah ushered the kids into the house, locking the doors behind them. My cousins and friends started to arrive, and I instructed them on what to do. "Call authorities and let them know of the situation and tell them that things are about to escalate," I said. The mob of teenagers stopped at the edge of my property, their eyes fixed on me. Lucy stepped forward, her voice dripping with venom. "We're here to finish what we started," she sneered. "You can't stop us." "This is my property," I said, my voice firm despite the fear that gnawed at me. "You need to leave, now, before things get worse." Lucy just laughed. "Worse? This is just the beginning," she said. "We're taking over this pool, whether you like it or not." Suddenly, the teenagers surged forward, swarming onto my property. They were shouting and jeering, their faces twisted with aggression. It was chaos. My friends tried to hold them back, but they were outnumbered. The teenagers pushed and shoved, trying to break through the line. I raised the baseball bat, my body tense. "Stop!" I yelled. "I don't want to hurt anyone, but I will if I have to." But they didn't listen. They kept coming, their determination fueled by Lucy's instigation. One of the teenagers lunged at me, trying to grab the bat. I sidestepped him and swung the bat, connecting with his arm. He yelped in pain and stumbled backward. That was the signal for all-out war. The teenagers surged forward, attacking me and my friends. I swung the bat again, hitting another teenager in the leg. He fell to the ground, clutching his leg in pain. The fight was brutal and chaotic. Punches were thrown, bodies collided, and shouts filled the air. I tried to defend myself and my friends, swinging the bat whenever anyone got too close. But there were too many of them, and they were relentless. Suddenly, I heard the sound of sirens in the distance. The teenagers seemed to hesitate, their faces clouding with uncertainty. Lucy, however, remained defiant. "Don't stop!" she screamed. "We're almost there!" But the sirens were getting closer, and the teenagers were starting to panic. Then, as if on cue, my friends who were hiding in the corner started filming the whole event. They uploaded to all social media platforms to gather evidence of the events that occurred. The approaching sirens grew louder, and the mass of teenagers began to fracture, their bravado quickly evaporating as the reality of the situation set in. Panic surged through the group, overriding Lucy's frantic attempts to maintain control. One by one, they started to peel away, scrambling over the fence and scattering down the street, desperate to escape the consequences of their actions. Lucy, however, stood her ground, her eyes blazing with defiant fury. She seemed to believe that she was somehow immune to the consequences, that her entitlement would protect her from the law. As the first police car screeched to a halt in front of my house, she turned to me, her voice dripping with contempt. "You haven't won!" she spat. "This isn't over." The police officers jumped out of their cars, their faces grim. They quickly assessed the scene, taking in the scattered teenagers, the overturned furniture, and the overall sense of chaos. One of the officers approached Lucy, his hand resting on his holster. "You're under arrest," he said, his voice cold and authoritative. Lucy's face crumbled. "What? No! You can't arrest me!" she protested, her voice rising in hysteria. "He started it! He wouldn't let us have our party!" The officer ignored her protests and placed her in handcuffs. As he led her towards the police car, she continued to scream and struggle, her entitlement finally colliding with the full force of the law. It was a sight I wouldn't soon forget. The other officers began rounding up the remaining teenagers who were now cowering in fear. My cousins and friends gave their statements to the police, recounting the events that had transpired. My friends, who caught everything on camera, were going to provide that too. As Lucy was being placed in the back of the police car, Karen arrived, her face a mask of shock and dismay. She rushed towards Lucy, her voice filled with desperation. "What's going on? What happened?" Lucy, tears streaming down her face, pointed at me. "He did this, Mom! He called the police on us!" Karen turned to me, her eyes filled with rage. "How dare you!" she screamed. "How dare you call the police on my daughter? She did nothing wrong. Your daughter trespassed on my property, assaulted me, and incited a riot," I said, my voice calm but firm. "She's lucky she's not facing more serious charges." Karen sputtered with indignation, but the officer quickly intervened, telling her to calm down and to let the police handle the situation. She was informed that she would have to pay a substantial bail to get Lucy released, and that her daughter would be facing serious legal consequences. In the end, Lucy was charged with trespassing, assault, and inciting a riot. The other teenagers were released with warnings, but their parents were informed of their involvement in the incident. Karen had to pay a hefty bail to get Lucy out of jail, and they were both ordered to stay away from my property. The aftermath of the incident was exhausting, but I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Justice had finally been served. Lucy's reign of terror was over, and Karen's entitlement had finally been checked. The trial was brief, and Lucy was sentenced to 200 hours of community service and had to attend anger management classes. Life slowly returned to normal. The pool was cleaned, the furniture was rearranged, and the sense of peace finally returned to our backyard. But the memory of that day remained, a stark reminder of the importance of standing up for what is right. And the consequences of unchecked privilege and entitlement. We installed security cameras and a higher fence, just in case. I learned a valuable lesson that day, that even in the most peaceful of neighborhoods, There are forces that can threaten your peace and your security, and that it is up to you to defend yourself, your family, and your property, no matter what the cost.